It's time for Herd Mentality, the weekly episode where you control the discussion today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs wind down, the sports stop sportsing like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Well, folks, welcome in. We've got a bunch of great herd mentality items to get to, a bunch of Von Miller stuff. We'll start with that and get to a bunch of good stuff, like I mentioned. So let's do it. The first one today comes from Nathan. Nathan says, Von is all over socials, angry posting about this upcoming season. I know that you are low on expectations for this year, but who does he have to be this season to make his presence worth his contract and to take snaps from Epenesa and Rousseau? Can we still expect a ceiling, even if it's far-fetched, anywhere close to 70 to 80% of his pro career highs? 6 sacks, quarterback pressures on 15% of total snaps? I totally get the question. But if we're looking at this through the lens of him justifying his contract, Von Miller is the 13th highest paid edge rusher in the NFL. If he's going to perform at a level, can measure it with that, he's got to be a dude. And so setting expectations is very, very difficult. He's 35 years old, and he was a disaster at 34 years old coming off of an ACL tear. I have a very difficult time putting expectations on him. I just don't know what to expect. I think if he can be close to his former self, that would be huge for this team. You've heard me say all offseason long that my top concern is pass rush. But you could literally tell me any outcome for Von Miller in 2024, and I'd probably believe you. He seems motivated. He obviously has something to prove. He's a prideful man that's had a great career that I'm sure would like to end on a high note, and he sounds like he wants to play. Well, he's got to play well. But if he's going to live up to his contract, we're talking about he's got to be one of the better pass rushers in the league. Not the best, not Myles Garrett or Max Crosby. I'm not saying that. But can he be on the level of an Alex Highsmith? That's kind of the ballpark that he's paid. That would be nice. That would be huge. I think you could talk about the 2024 Bills from a number of lenses. But if that 2024 Buffalo Bills team gets Von Miller, that's close to the Von Miller that we saw before the injury, I think that would be monumental for this football team. Mike says, I know Von Miller restructured his deal and bet on himself this offseason. What kind of season does Von need to have to stick around in 2025? It's a good question. So Von Miller can be cut after this season, and the Bills could save some money. They would accumulate $15.4 million in dead cap space, but they would get $8.5 million in cap savings. If they were to cut him in the offseason and designate him as a post-June 1st release like they did with Tre'Davious White, the Bills would accumulate $6.4 million in dead cap in 2025, but they would get $17.5 million in 2025 cap savings. Now, that does come with a huge piece of information that you need to be aware of, is if they do that, it does mean you carry an additional $9 million dead cap hit in 2026 if they do it that way. So you can, if you could cut them and you could do it clean and be done with all of Von Miller after 2025, or you can do the post 6-1 release and, you carry some dead cap into 2026. The reality is, if Von Miller is something like what we've seen in the past, you're still going to have questions about him at 36 years old, right, being effective, regardless of how good he is this year. But you kind of feel like this is it for Von Miller in Buffalo. And I certainly hope that he does the things he came to Buffalo to do, and that's help this team win a Super Bowl. So go do it, Von. And if that's what happens, if Von Miller's part of a Super Bowl winning team with the Bills, we're not going to care. We're not going to care about anything after that. But it would be cool. We'll see. Again, my expectations for Von Miller are very, very low. I just don't know what to expect. Robert says we've drafted in the first round, the second round, signed Von Miller. No matter what we do, the pass rush just hasn't been good enough. We need Rousseau and Epenesa to step up big time. I'm tired of seeing the opposing quarterback standing back there with 5 to 6 seconds to throw or escaping and running down the field. Should the Bills be adding more blitz packages and schemes to get to the quarterback? Well, the Bills, Sean McDermott blitzed a fair amount last year, right at 24%, which is pretty close to the league average, like middle of the pack blitz rate. And he did that because of what you're talking about, that there just was times where the organic pass rush, when I say organic pass rush, I mean rushing with 4, they weren't getting there consistently. And so you try to heat up that throw, force the ball to come out quicker than that quarterback wants it to, and the results were mixed. It's not like the Bills blitzed a lot and that was very effective either. And there's a trade-off. When you send pressure, you lose defenders in coverage. So it's kind of a pick your poison thing. Ideally, and I think this is the goal of any defense, is that you're very good at getting that organic pressure with 4 rushers. But here's the thing about the Bills' pass rush. For as much as I talk about the concerns, metrically, they were very good last year. Like excellent. One of the best in the league. Had a pressure rate of 24.4%. That's 6th best in the NFL. They had 54 sacks. That's the 4th most of any team in the NFL last year. They had a sack rate of 8.9%. 3rd highest in the league. These metrics are awesome. But I don't think it tells a story. To me, it's more how effective the rush is in high leverage situations, and then especially in the playoffs. Against Mahomes, against Burrow. Where's the pass rush? I think it's been MIA. And I think that spoiled Josh Allen's contributions in the playoffs. Josh Allen's unbelievable in the playoffs. He always shows up. His defense lets him down. And I when I talk defense and where it's good and bad, I go right to the front. I think that's where defensive football is won. Up front. Dudes up front. Guys that can beat blocks, wreak havoc, make tackles behind the line of scrimmage, heat up the quarterback. To me, that's what it's about. I just don't see the Bills doing a good enough job of that in the playoffs. How can that be different this year? You see guys like Leonard Floyd. How good of a season did he have? He had a great season. Where was he in the playoffs? Did he have any impact? Ed Oliver, great season, right? Awesome. Big breakout. Where were you in the playoffs, bud? These guys got to step up in those moments. And what's hard about this conversation is that you look at the defensive line personnel. It's not like you see a bunch of additions. You don't have any additions, really. A draft pick in Javon Solomon? A couple of new backup defensive tackles? You're hoping that Von Miller can have a pulse. You're hoping that Rousseau takes a step. You're hoping that Epenesa takes a step. And then, Ed Oliver, of course, continues what he's doing, but more clutch in big moments. And then Daquan Jones. Daquan Jones, he's not a premier pass rusher, but man, was he so good rushing the passer earlier in the season. So this is a big task for Bobby Babich in his first year as a defensive coordinator. Marcus West in his first year as a defensive line coach. How can these guys be better in those big high leverage moments? And there's also an element to coverage, right? Coverage and pass rush, when they're married up and they go hand in hand, that's when you're going to play your best defense. But to me, it's about the rush up front, and I'm hoping that the Bills can be really good at that this year, although I have a hard time really talking myself into that being true, because what are you relying on? Like I talked about, Von Miller, who knows? Epenesa, I like him, right? But is he more of a defensive end 3, like a high-end defensive end 3? Rousseau, a really good player, but is he ever going to be like that big-time sack artist? We'll find out. All right, folks, we got more to talk about outside of defensive line in Von Miller. We're going to talk about the offensive line shuffle, Josh Allen's mechanics. Got a bunch to get to on the other side of it, so be sure to stick with me. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime that I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. You can get in on Major League Baseball. I've had a lot of fun with golf props as well lately. So check all that out. Head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and make the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, folks, the next one today comes from James. James says, offenses, all right, here's a question about offense. Are we legitimately moving McGovern to center and David Edwards to left guard, or are we going to utilize Sedrick Van Pran Granger at center and keep McGovern at left guard? My gut tells me we made so many new moves on the roster, and we spent a quality draft pick on Van Pran for a center-only slot that we should use him. That also gives us continuity at left guard and Edwards as the extra offensive line. Your thoughts? No, I think this is happening. I think the Bills are going to play Connor McGovern at center, and they're going to play David Edwards at left guard. I mean, you've heard Connor McGovern speak very openly about how this is his natural position. He can't wait to go back home. This is part of the plan when they signed him. It was the plan in Dallas when they drafted him, but then the coaching staff changed over. There's all the momentum is pointing towards this. And then, David Edwards is a guy that, of course, brought about value to the Bills as a utility blocker, but they gave him a decent little contract. And I would assume that's to be the starting left guard, at least for this season. So I do think this is going to happen. And Aaron Kromer does have time on task with David Edwards. They spent a couple of years together with the Rams, including Kromer being part of the coaching staff when they drafted him. So, he's got a big hand in that. But here's one thing that I will say. Don't label Sedrick Van Pran Granger as a center only. I can tell you that the team does not think that he's a center only. Aaron Kromer, when he was with the Rams, he played Austin Blythe at guard. If you can play Austin Blythe at guard, you can play anybody at guard. And I'm talking 4 seasons, over 1,800 snaps at guard, Austin Blythe. Austin Blythe, 6'2", 291 pounds with 30 1/4 inch arms. Van Pran Granger, 6'4", 298 with 31 3/8 on the arm length. So taller, bigger, and longer arms. And the biggest thing about Van Pran Granger is that he's a very powerful blocker. That's what you're worried about at guard. When you say a guy's a center only, measurables is typically part of that. But bigger than that is that you just don't feel like that they have the anchor and the functional strength to consistently have guys stacked over top of them at guard. And so you put them at center and you mitigate that. You're not concerned about that with Sed. And again, I'm telling you that the Bills do not look at Van Pran Granger as a center only. But I do think that's the plan. And can Van Pran Granger beat out David Edwards at left guard? Maybe. Maybe that's more of a 2025 thing. But as I've said repeatedly, I think he can be the Khalil Shakir of this draft class. Just got to let it play out a little bit. Next one here comes from Jason. Jason says, you've expressed excitement in Josh Allen refining his mechanics this offseason. Do you see a season like 2020 when he broke out and shut up the naysayers again? I feel like another MVP caliber season is coming. Hopefully, fingers crossed, lower interceptions as well. Love to know your thoughts. I mean, Josh Allen has finished in the top 5 in MVP voting in 3 of the last 4 years. That's the level of performance that, quite honestly, I expect from Josh Allen on a yearly basis. And what's funny about the interceptions is that, of course, he had a career high in volume of interceptions with 18, but he also had a career low in turnover-worthy play percentage. He had 21 turnover-worthy plays and 18 interceptions. The guy just had no luck whatsoever with interceptions last year. When he threw an interceptable pass, they intercepted it every time. So I think back to your question about, like, is this going to be an MVP caliber season for Josh Allen? I think that the improved mechanics could absolutely be a factor in Josh Allen having a big-time season if it does actually lead to better ball placement, better efficiency with the quick game. That's going to help his stats be better. How much of that, though, is offset by everything new around him? I don't know. I'm optimistic. You've heard me talk about that quite a bit this offseason. I like the vibe quite a bit right now, but we'll see how it all comes together. But my expectation for Josh Allen every year of his career is to be an MVP candidate. He's told us that's the type of player he is, and I want to see that year in and year out. Jason asks, what were your thoughts on Dalton Kincaid as a blocker in his rookie year? How often did he line up inline versus split out? Do you think the Bills will use him more as a traditional inline tight end as his career progresses? And can he be an adequate or plus blocker for us in that role? I think that Dalton Kincaid, as a blocker, as a rookie, I would label him as a high effort positional blocker. He lacks the mass and power to be a consistent inline people mover. But what he does do is he competes to get his body in good positions, and he works really hard. So that's kind of who he is. And I think the fact that I could say that about him after watching him at Utah and having a similar thought is like, good on you, Dalton Kincaid, for at least being what we saw in college against better competition. I don't think he's ever going to be a plus blocker, and quite honestly, I don't really care that he ever is. Dalton Kincaid's part of this team, and we're excited about him because he can catch the football, right? The receiving profile is the exciting part here. But as long as he's not a liability, I think that's what's important. As for his snap alignment last year, on passing snaps, Dalton Kincaid was 20% inline, 60% from the slot, 18% wide. On rundowns, 58% in line, 25% from the slot, 17% wide. So I think that gives you, the fact that they played in 58% of snaps on running downs in line versus 20% of snaps in line on passing downs suggests that they do have a level of confidence in him being able to function in line. But is he ever going to be amazing at it? I don't think so. We just need him to be able to hold his head above water. That's kind of what I'm looking for from Dalton Kincaid, the blocker. All right, folks, coming up on the other side of it, we're going to talk salary cap. We're going to talk a little bit about trends of the league, some luck. We'll get into all of that here on the other side of it, so be sure to stick with me. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Comparison is the thief of joy, and it's easy to envy other people's lives. It might look like they have it all together on their Instagram, but in reality, they probably don't. Therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have, so you can start living your best life. Therapy is helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It's not just for people who have experienced major trauma. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, folks, welcome back in. We got a few more to get to here today. The next one comes from Thompson. Thompson says, my question is fairly basic, but I'm wondering about salary cap flexibility. I know teams need to be cap compliant by the start of the new league year, but when and how do teams become over the cap by tens of millions of dollars? What point of the offseason/in-season do front offices make this happen? And what 3 to 4 players really stand out to you that would be all in for the Bills? So here's the thing about being over the cap. Teams are never actually over the cap. They are projected to be over the cap at the start of the new year. So when we talk about that, we're referring to the current projected cap position at the start of the new league year based on how contracts are structured. And then teams take that opportunity to become and maintain cap compliancy at all times. So no team is ever over the salary cap. What you're looking at is you're saying, okay, coming out of 2023, this is go back to last year as an example. Coming out of 2023, the Bills were projected to be over the salary cap at the start of the new league year by $50 million. So that means they had to clear $50 million in cap space, which we saw what they did to get there. They make all those moves knowing that, okay, when the clock strikes midnight on whatever day the new league year starts, we have to be cap compliant and maintain cap compliancy. So teams are never over the cap. They're projected to be over the cap, and they understand that there's a deadline to get that all taken care of. So it's not like you become cap compliant and then all of a sudden throw a party, right, and sign all the players and spend all the money. You have to be cap compliant at all times. So we're talking projections. And so you can look at it right now and say, okay, the cap's going to be here. Your salaries are going to be here. By the new league year, you better get this figured out or else you're going to be in trouble. But every team is always cap compliant. We look at projections and understand what teams have to do to get themselves there. The next one comes from Boris. Boris says, you have spoken on how some of the league's offenses slowly have been responding to too high shell types of defenses with more 12 personnel and jumbo run-oriented offensive looks as a counter move. Bills are an example, as are the Chiefs. My question is that this is not picked up on for a majority of league observers and content creators. Do you have any idea why? Well, I can't answer that question for other people. But I guess I don't think a lot of people study film and personnel metrics as part of their process, which I personally don't understand. A lot of people, their analysis is writing narratives, reacting based on how they feel from watching games live. And, they come up with these opinions and they might find a common stat to support their opinion, but that's it. To me, I think you got to be in the film. You got to be studying the analytics, asking yourself questions like, why is this the way? And you kind of figure it out. The analyst I aspire to be is one that studies tape, studies metrics, and tries to determine the how and why. So that's kind of who I dictate the analysis that I pay attention to based on who I think does those things, because I think that's how you truly figure it out. Like, to me, when we do the all 22 review episodes, that is straight up therapy for me. Even if the Bills lose or play poorly, like, the answers to me are always in the tape. It's not based on the emotional response that you have from watching a football game. Like, that can get you places, that can help you form opinions, but the reality, the truth, it's always in the tape. And so I couldn't do this job without studying the film, taking notes, seeing trends, studying it, asking why, looking at metrics. Like, I think that's how you gain the full picture so that you can deliver the full picture. That's what I aspire to be, and the analysts that I care about do that. Next one here comes from John. John says, you've said numerous times in the past that luck factors into winning a Super Bowl on top of good roster construction. I was curious, do you think injury luck or turnover luck is more important once you enter the playoffs? Good question here, but I do want to point out, like, it's a little uncomfortable to acknowledge, but there is an element of luck or things going your way to win the Super Bowl. Like, go to any team that's ever won the Super Bowl, and I can promise you, I can point to a moment that went their way that led to that win. Think about, like, just the Chiefs when they beat the Eagles. There was that crappy punt by Aaron Sipros that was a line drive that set them up for the short field. Special teams blunders against the 49ers last year. The pass interference call when the Rams beat the Bengals, right? Like, there's always these little things that just kind of go your way. Now, I think you can create your own luck to an extent, and the chance favors the prepared. Like, I believe in that too, but there is an element of, hey, it goes our way. Playoffs in the NFL are single elimination game, and the ball has a weird shape, right? Things can happen. But to your question is it more important to have injury luck or turnover luck? I think it's probably injury luck. I mean, at the end of the day, football is our guys versus your guys, our best players versus your best players. And if you don't have your guys, then it's hard to stack up how you want to be, and it's hard to be the team that you're designed to be. Go back to, like, literally last year with the Bills. I keep going back to this, but I think it provides a good foundation for this answer. When the Bills lost Matt Milano, what did they have to do on passing downs? Tyrell Dotson comes off the field. Jordan Poyer moves from safety to linebacker. Taylor Rapp comes in as a deep safety. all because you didn't have a key skill set for foundationally how you play defense. And you don't have guys like that, it's tough. You build a team, you invest your salary cap with a certain vision in mind, and if you don't have your guys, it's key. I mean, that's kill you. It'll absolutely kill you. Turnovers matter a ton, don't get me wrong. There's a huge correlation to winning and losing in the NFL based on turnover differential, but as the saying goes, your best ability is your availability. So give me the injury luck. Give me the guys that I'm supposed to have, and we'll let the chips fall where they may when it comes to turnovers. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us here today on the podcast. As always, I kindly ask that you rate, review, share, and subscribe. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.